right, so let's get started. All right, so nuances of a sales cycle. So many of us typically consider selling as a medium of revenue making, whereas sales is much more than that. While revenue making contributes to a majority of understanding of a sales cycle typically is much more than that, and it has a much higher perspective of business creation and business value expansion. So let us try and typically, first of all, jot down the different stages that are there in a sales. Now, this is extremely important slide, and I will keep referring back to this over and over again as and when I keep completing one part. All right. So we start off right from prospecting. Now, for anybody who's I'll go in my particular pace, but anywhere you feel that this is a word or terminology that you did not understand, I would be more than happy to spend a couple of minutes extra on it. All right. So starts with prospecting. Prospecting, who's the person who is going to buy? If I am creating a product or a service in the market, who is that person that's going to buy? What is the persona of that person? It could be a person, it could be an institution, it could be a group of people, it could be anybody. It could be a single unit, it could be a multi-unit, it could be a conglomerate. Who is that person or entity or persona that's going to buy from me? That is what is prospecting, which is one of the most important. Now, once the prospecting is done, we move on to lead generation. Now, so typically, this acts like a typical funnel where your prospects are going to be the maximum at the top of the rim. Around the rim, at the top of the circle, the prospects are going to be the maximum, right? Because I will feel like, let's say I am into a recliner making company. I make recliners. So for me, a prospect is anybody, because everybody sleeps, everybody wants to rest. So probably a recliner is needed for anybody from age 10, 12 onwards to an age 70 onwards, to 70, 75, 80, right? So my prospect funnel, my prospect bucket is extremely large. From there, how do I generate a lead? A lead, who is a lead? A lead is anybody that you can probably convert into a customer who pays money to you. So there's a difference between a prospect and a lead. A prospect is anybody. It is a wider funnel. From a prospect, you convert into a lead, has a more possibility of converting into your customer. All right. Now, in a lead, there are two stages. One is a lead generation. That this is a person who I believe fits the prospect profile and then can also pay money to buy my product or service. Has the capacity to pay money to buy my product or services. From lead generation, you go to lead filtering or qualification. What is that? Somebody who can pay services will pay for my services or product. So the distance between the can and the will go from lead generating to lead qualification. That's somebody who has the intent, or somebody who has the capacity, who can, converting into somebody who has the intent, has an expression of interest, that this is something that interests them. And if I pitch my product or my service properly, this is a possible client for me in terms of revenue. Once the lead is qualified, we move on to discussion stage. Discussion typically, I mean, of course, this number, I have written 3 levels of discussion. This number can vary. This number can be 5 in certain cases and probably 1 in certain cases. But typically on an average, there are 3 levels of discussion. I will talk about this in the coming slides as to what are these 3 levels of discussion. And then you have 3 levels of negotiation, wherein you place the first offer, then a counter offer comes, and then probably back and forth 2 or 3 telephonic or Zoom communications or physical meetings to kind of hit that sweet spot where the other person also doesn't feel like they're being overpriced and you also don't feel like you're taking in a loss. Then comes your SLA or your LOI. So typically after a mutually agreeable price is decided for your product or service, you come to an SLA or an LOI. Even before an SLA and LOI comes into place, LOI means letter of intent. So letter of intent is typically 90% of the service-oriented organizations use an LOI. LOI talks about I agree with this kind of price for your product and service, but I don't have the entire money to give it to you right now. So I would sign up a letter of intent with you against a token amount to confirm my interest so that you stop your conversations with other people for my territory, right? SLA is service legal agreement. That's the expanded complete total agreement that two people enter into after a deal has been literally business handshake. After that deal has happened, there comes an SLA between the buyer and the seller. That is a comprehensive agreement, a watertight agreement. We'll discuss on that also later on. So after the SLA and LOI, the payment comes. So if the LOI has been signed, then a token payment comes. If the SLA is signed, then the complete payment comes. Or whatever the payment schedule is, according to the SLA, that happens. Typically, 9 out of 10 people consider point number 1 to point number 7 as the sales cycle. Ideally, there is that one person out of 10 who considers this entire 1 to 12 as the sales cycle, because that's the phenomenal sales guy who stands out apart from the others. Everybody stops at this 7th payment because that's what the exact KRA or the deliverable of a sales guy is. But the actual sales, actual elevation of that sales prospect converting into a much bigger proposition for you later on starts after that. So number 1 in that after the payment stage cycle is post-sale service. Number 2, monthly service audits. Whatever it is, whether it's a product, it's a one-time product that you've sold, whether it's a service that you have given, whatever it is, never refrain from going from a monthly service audit with them, wherein you sit with them and discuss openly about the kind of deliverables that were promised against the deliverables that were delivered. Many a times what happens is sales to prospect, sales conversion to servicing has a major gap. How many of you agree with me on this? A lot of you are working in service and product segments. How many of you agree with me? That there's a lot of difference between what is promised pre-sale to what is delivered after sale. There is a gap, right? And that gap is for multiple reasons. Either the salesperson overcommitted, or else the salesperson mentioned something which were not given in the SLA. There are a lot of reasons for which this kind of gap can come in. The only thing that bridges this gap is the ability of an efficient sales leader to kind of go back to the client and ask that let's sit down and do a performance review. Because the most disgruntled clients after sales service are the ones who never get a checkup or a feedback from the people who have closed the sales. So lot of critical resolutions, high escalations, firefighting situations, 90% of them can be avoided if the salesperson takes the onus or the responsibility that, okay, this was promised, this was not delivered in the time frame, this is what we can do. Let's do an audit check. Let us decide this is what we want to do. This is what are the deliverables from me that are pending, and let us find a newer timeline. I said I would come do it in 30 days. I couldn't. Let my team give an additional 10 days. That's all that the client needs. The client needs to be heard, right? The problem that happens is the gap between the sale and the post-sale, right? So post-sale is one of the most efficient qualities for a sales guy, typically, to ensure that he has maximum number of conversions, because a disgruntled customer will spoil 10 other customers for you. When you think about it. When you get a good dish from Zomato, do you give a good rating? No, you don't. But when you get a bad dish from Zomato, the first person is you to go back on Zomato and give a scathing review. Why? Because negative emotions need an outburst. Good ones don't. Good ones come for a certain period of time and then dissipate. But the negative ones need a physical manifestation of that outburst. So a disgruntled customer will always spoil 10 more customers for you. And a happy customer will always get 5 more for you. Mark my words, right? So post-sale service is extremely important. Now, in that post-sale service, you have the monthly service audits. go to the renewal stage. If it's a service legal agreement for 1 year, 6 months, 3 months, whatever it is, the renewal will only happen if you have been very particular in this post-sale and monthly service audits. After renewal, if renewal is an option, get a renewal. If renewal is not an option, upsell. If you have a bigger product kitty, let's say somebody has, let's say, okay, let me take the example of this lady who's writing a book. So she sells, she's planning to sell books on an online platform. Let's say 50 people buy the books, right? Out of those 50 people, she will have the details of all of them, the mail ID, the phone numbers and everything. Imagine if all that she does is after 15 days of selling the book, just a very personalized message. Thank you for purchasing the book. I hope this is the passion with which I wrote it. I hope this passion was communicated across in the book. I look forward to your feedback. As simple as that. She's not needed to do that because she's made that sale. She's made the one-time commit. She's got the money that is supposed to come from the sale of a book. But if she does that added effort, she can upsell. How she can upsell? The next 3 books that she will launch, these are her ready reference customers. I'll take up SalesWomentoring example. SalesWomentoring, when I did the first first workshop 1 year back, that was a free workshop. Okay, that was a free one. We were reaching out for brand awareness. And I had the record 84 people coming in. That was the record, highest so far, right? Now, since that time the number was highest, it was automatically supposed to translate into the paid workshop also. So since all of them had that kind of feedback, they gave that kind of feedback, Chitra reached out to them, she engaged them in the community, she saw what the community, she gave an extra effort to incorporate them, keep presenting new people, better leaders, better mentors. Now that she's made to pay the conversion into a payment model, 24 people out of 25 people out of 84 people are sitting here on a paid session with me. That's the power of conversion. That's the power of engagement with a client even after a sale has happened, or even when the sale has not happened. That's the power of engagement with the client. If upselling is not an option, let's say you have just one product and you've sold that product, there is no way you can upsell that person anything else. Then what you ask for is referrals. Referrals. Then you ask for referrals. But any which ways, that person, a happy customer, a satisfied customer, becomes your doorway to new business. Either way, whether he or she purchases the business or he or she refers you to somebody else. That will definitely happen, right? And then this whole 1 to 11 is repeated again for a new customer.